They gave me the worst room on the family trip. They didn't know I owned the hotel. I decided to keep quiet and just observe the annual family reunion. It was a tradition my mother insisted on maintaining, though for me, it always meant a weekend of constant comparisons and cutting remarks. This year would be no different, except that the luxurious hotel where we were staying was now my property, thanks to the inheritance my grandfather had secretly left me 6 months earlier. When I arrived in the lobby of the Seabrook Grand, my heart was pounding. I watched as my sister, Jessica, the family favorite, was welcomed with hugs and smiles from everyone. No one even noticed my presence until my mother saw me and frowned. "I thought you wouldn't come, Claire," she said, not bothering to hide her disappointment. "I wouldn't miss our family reunion for anything in the world," I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. My brother-in-law, Rob, Jessica's husband, looked me up and down, evaluating my outfit as always. "Seems like the graphic design business isn't so lucrative after all," he commented with a mocking smile. If only they knew. My small company was now a respected agency with international clients. But I never bothered to correct their assumptions. What hurt most was the secret I was keeping. This 5-star hotel, with its impeccable gardens and ocean view, now belonged to me. Grandfather Arthur had always seen something in me that the rest of the family ignored. "We've distributed the rooms," my mother announced as the manager, Michael, handed out the keys. My sister and her husband received the presidential suite with an ocean view. My parents, an executive suite. My cousins, deluxe rooms. And me. "Claire, you'll stay in room 108 on the first floor," she declared. The room next to the laundry, the smallest and noisiest in the hotel. Everyone exchanged glances, some with shame, others with poorly disguised amusement. Michael, the manager, seemed uncomfortable. "Ma'am, we could look for another option for the young lady," he began, but my mother interrupted him. "It's not necessary. Claire is simple. She doesn't need luxuries." I saw how Michael looked at me with concern. He knew who I really was. But we had agreed to keep my position as owner a secret during this family reunion. "It's fine, Michael," I said calmly. "Room 108 will be perfect." I took the key and headed to the elevator, feeling my family's eyes on my back. On the way, I heard my cousin Danielle whisper, "As always, Claire settles for the leftovers." The room was exactly as I remembered from old staff blueprints, small, with a window overlooking the service area and the constant hum of the laundry machines. I sat on the single bed and took a deep breath. I wasn't here to confront my family or to humiliate them by revealing I was the owner. I was here to understand why they treated me this way. Why, after 30 years, they still saw me as the least valuable among them. That night, during the welcome dinner at the hotel restaurant, my family occupied the best table. My chair was partially hidden behind a column. While everyone ordered the most expensive dishes on the menu, I ordered a simple salad. "Can't you afford something better, Claire?" my father asked with a mixture of mockery and pity. "We can treat you if you want." "The salad is fine, thank you," I replied, maintaining my dignity. The conversation revolved, as always, around Jessica's achievements, her recent promotion at the bank, her new house in an exclusive neighborhood. "Our Jessica always knew what she wanted," my mother said proudly. "Not like Claire, who wasted her life with that drawing business." The head chef, Anthony, approached our table to personally greet the guests. Upon seeing me, he gave a small, respectful bow that didn't go unnoticed. "Was the salad to your liking, Miss Claire?" he asked respectfully. "Delicious, Anthony." "Thank you," I replied. My family looked at me strangely. "You know the chef?" Jessica asked, surprised. "We've crossed paths before," I replied vaguely. The truth was that I had personally hired Anthony 3 months earlier, after Grandfather Arthur left me the hotel. The night progressed, and with each glass of wine, the comments directed at me became more cutting. The secret I kept was weighing on me more and more. Should I reveal the truth? What would they do if they knew that every insult, every humiliation, was happening under my own roof? Michael approached discreetly. "Miss Claire, there's an urgent matter that requires your attention," he said quietly. "What could be so urgent for Claire?" Rob mocked. "Did they run out of colored pencils?" I stood up calmly, ignoring the comment. "Excuse me. I'll be back in a moment." In the private office, Michael looked concerned. "Miss, I can't continue watching how they treat you. You're the owner of this place." "I know, Michael, but I need to understand something before I reveal the truth. There's a family wound that's been open for a long time." I looked out the window at the dark sea. "And I think I'm close to discovering why my family resents me so much." I returned to the table, where my family was enjoying exclusive desserts. My cousin Jason was in the middle of a story about his recent purchase of a sports car when my Aunt Helen, always the most observant, asked me, "What did that employee want with you, Claire? Do you know him from somewhere?" I felt all eyes fix on me. "Just a confusion with the reservation," I replied casually, taking a sip of water. "Typical of Claire," Jessica murmured to Rob, loud enough for me to hear. "Always causing problems." That night, when everyone had retired to their luxurious rooms, I stayed in the deserted lobby. Michael approached with a cup of tea. "Your grandfather would be proud of you," he said quietly. "Mr. Arthur always knew you would be the one to best care for his legacy." I smiled melancholically. My grandfather was the only one who saw something special in me. Sometimes I wonder if he wasn't mistaken. Michael shook his head firmly. "In the few months you've been running the hotel, you've implemented more improvements than any previous owner. The staff respects you." Mr. Arthur wasn't mistaken. The next day, during the breakfast buffet, I noticed that several staff members greeted me with disguised respect. My family was too busy serving themselves the most exclusive delicacies to notice. "Claire, are you only eating that?" my mother asked, looking at my plate of fruit and yogurt. "That's why you're so thin. You look sick." "I'm perfectly healthy, Mom," I replied. "I simply prefer to start the day with something light." Rob burst out laughing. "Light? You mean cheap? I bet you calculate every penny you spend." The comment provoked laughter at the table. I took a deep breath and focused on my breakfast. It wasn't the moment for revelations. The morning passed with activities: a tour of the hotel, time at the pool, massages at the spa. Of course, my parents had organized everything so that Jessica and her husband received the best treatments. For me, there were only leftovers. "I'm sorry, but it seems there's no more space for the premium massage," my mother informed me with false disappointment. "You'll have to settle for the basic one." Later, I discovered that she had deliberately canceled my reservation for the premium treatment, claiming it would be a waste on Claire. During lunch, the conversation turned to a familiar topic: Grandfather Arthur's inheritance. "I'll never understand why Dad sold the hotel before he died," my mother commented, looking around nostalgically. "It was his greatest pride." "He certainly must have received an irresistible offer," my father replied. "Too bad we never knew who bought it." Jessica sighed dramatically. "If the hotel were still ours, we could stay for free. We could even give Claire a decent room," she added, as if she were doing me a favor. I suppressed a smile. If only they knew the truth about the inheritance and the family secret I was about to discover. That afternoon, while my parents and Jessica enjoyed a yacht tour, I slipped into my grandfather's old office, now my private office. Michael was waiting for me with a box of documents. "I found what you asked for, Miss Claire," he said, placing the box on the table. "These are all your grandfather's personal documents related to your family." I began reviewing letters, photographs, and diaries. Among them, I found a yellowed envelope dated 15 years ago. It contained a letter from my mother to my grandfather that left me breathless. "Dad, you have to understand that Claire isn't like us. She never was. If you continue treating her as your favorite, you'll only hurt her. She doesn't have what it takes to succeed in this family. Jessica is the one who should inherit the hotel someday." My hands were shaking. I continued reading similar letters spanning years, where my own mother tried to convince my grandfather that I didn't deserve his attention or his inheritance, detailing my supposed failures and weaknesses. A handwritten, unsent note from my grandfather fell out from one of the pages. "Eleanor, it saddens me to see how you treat your own daughter. Claire has a spirit and intelligence that you can't even see. Someday, all of you will realize the mistake you've made." The discovery hit me like a cold wave. It wasn't just envy or family rivalry. My own mother had systematically orchestrated my marginalization. "Are you all right, miss?" Michael asked, concerned by my silence. "No," I replied honestly. but I will be. I continued reading and discovered something even more disturbing. My father and Rob had tried to manipulate my grandfather into selling them the hotel at a reduced price shortly before his death. Their plan had failed when my grandfather, suspicious of their intentions, decided to secretly leave it to me. A knock on the door interrupted my investigation. It was Danielle, my cousin. "Claire, what are you doing here?" "This area is for authorized personnel only," she said, looking curiously at the documents scattered on the table. Michael intervened quickly. "The young lady was looking for information about the hotel's activities, Miss Danielle." Danielle didn't seem convinced. Her eyes narrowed, examining the office. "Isn't it strange that they let you into the private office? They wouldn't even let us take a look." "Maybe I'm not as insignificant as everyone thinks," I replied, holding her gaze. Something changed in her expression. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of doubt in her eyes. "You were always grandfather's favorite," she said slowly. We all knew it, though no one would admit it. When Danielle left, I knew my secret wouldn't last much longer. The family would start to suspect, and I would have to make a decision: continue enduring the humiliations or reveal that I, the despised Claire, was now the owner of the empire they all coveted. That night, during the formal dinner, the storm that had been brewing since my arrival finally broke, and with it, the opportunity for a reckoning I never knew I wanted. The gala dinner was the main event of our family reunion. The hotel's grand ballroom had been decorated with fresh flowers, candles, fine crystal, and linen tablecloths. I arrived deliberately late, wearing a simple but elegant black dress that I had designed myself. "Finally, you appear," my mother said irritably. "We were about to order without you." I took my place at the spot they had assigned me, again, the least favorable at the table. Rob was already half drunk, bragging about his recent real estate investments. "I bought 3 properties on the coast last month," he boasted. "If I play my cards right, I could even buy a hotel like this someday." Jessica smiled proudly. "My husband has business vision. Unlike other family members who are content drawing logos." My father raised his glass. "To Rob and Jessica, the true pride of this family." Everyone toasted while I kept my glass on the table. No one seemed to notice. During the first course, Danielle, who had been watching me intensely, finally spoke. "Claire, I saw you today in the hotel's private office. You seemed very comfortable there." A sudden silence fell over the table. All eyes turned to me. "What were you doing in a restricted area?" my father asked, frowning. I took a sip of water. "I was looking into some things about the hotel." "Why would you do that?" my mother asked. "It's not like you're going to buy one." Rob let out a thunderous laugh. "Claire owning a hotel? That would be a riot. She can't even afford a decent room." It was then that Michael approached our table with a bottle of exclusive champagne. "Miss Claire, the champagne you requested for your family," he announced. My mother blinked in confusion. "We didn't order any." "It's on the house," I interrupted calmly. "From me." "From you." Jessica almost choked. "How could you afford a bottle that probably costs more than your monthly rent?" Michael served the champagne while I maintained my composure. The tension at the table was palpable. "There are many things about me you don't know," I said simply. My father looked at me suspiciously. "What are you talking about, Claire? If you have something to say, say it." I contemplated my options. I could reveal my secret now, humiliate them as they had humiliated me for years. Revenge would be served on a silver platter. But as I observed their faces, something changed inside me. I didn't want to become like them. "I just wanted to make a kind gesture," I replied, "to celebrate that we're together as a family, despite everything." The surprise on their faces was evident. They didn't expect generosity from me after how they had treated me. The dinner continued, but something had subtly changed. Danielle looked at me with intrigue, as if she were reconsidering who I really was. During dessert, Jessica began talking about grandfather's inheritance again. I never understood why grandfather sold the hotel in secret. It was the family patrimony. "Maybe because he knew some would try to take advantage," I replied, looking directly at my father and Rob. "What are you insinuating?" Rob jumped in, suddenly defensive. "Nothing," I said calmly. Just that grandfather was more astute than everyone thought. My father looked at me with a mixture of suspicion and nervousness. Claire, if you know something about the hotel sale, you should share it with the family. So now I'm part of the family? I asked. How curious. A few hours ago, I was the poor relative who didn't even deserve a decent room. An uncomfortable silence fell. My mother tried to change the subject, but I continued. You know, grandfather told me many things. I spent hours with him while you were all busy with your important lives. He told me about his plans for the hotel, about what he wanted for his legacy. And what did he say? Jessica asked, unable to hide her curiosity. He told me that a family business is like a mirror. It reflects the values of those who run it. I made a significant pause. And that you always have to be careful with deceptive appearances. Rob slammed his fist on the table. Enough riddles. If you have something to say it clearly. At that moment, the hotel's general manager approached our table. Excuse the interruption. I just wanted to make sure everything was to your liking, especially for you, Miss Claire. My family watched uncomfortably as I received more preferential treatment. Everything is perfect, thank you, I replied with a smile. Why the hell do they treat you like you're someone important? My father demanded. I took a deep breath. I hadn't planned to reveal my secret that night, but the situation was escalating. I had to make a decision. Because they know my work, I replied. They simply respect what I do. Drawing logos, Rob mocked. I design corporate identities for international companies, I corrected him. My agency has clients on 3 continents and 30 employees. Last year, our revenue exceeded $3 million. The shock on their faces was immediate. My mother almost dropped her glass. You're lying, Jessica accused. If you were so successful, you would have bragged about it. Unlike some, I don't need constant validation from others, I replied. And there's a difference between humility and allowing myself to be treated like trash. If you're so successful, why did you accept staying in that horrible room? My mother asked, genuinely confused. Because I wanted to see how far you would take it, I replied honestly. I wanted to understand if there was any limit to the contempt you feel for me. My words fell like lead weights on the table. For the first time, I saw shame on some of their faces. Not on all, but it was a start. Claire, my father began, but I interrupted him. I'm not finished, I said firmly. For years, I endured your comments, your pitying looks, your constant condescension. All because I didn't follow the path you considered appropriate. Because I chose to create instead of destroy, to build instead of manipulate. My hands were shaking, but my voice remained steady. It was as if decades of silence had finally found their voice. Grandfather taught me that a person's value isn't in what they possess or the appearances they maintain, but in how they treat others. He saw something in me that you could never see, because you were too busy comparing me to your idea of success. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see emotions crossing their faces, disbelief, shame, confusion, and in some cases, the beginning of an uncomfortable realization. If this is true, my father finally said, why did you never say anything? Would you have listened? I asked. Or would you have found another way to minimize my achievements? He had no answer for that. We all knew the truth. The dinner ended in uncomfortable silence. As the others retired, Danielle stayed behind and sat beside me. I always knew you were different, she said quietly. Grandfather used to tell me to watch you, to learn from you. I never understood why until now. Our eyes met in a moment of mutual understanding. Claire, she continued, there's something more, isn't there? Something about this hotel and grandfather that you haven't said. I nodded slowly. And tomorrow, everyone will know. The next morning dawned with unusual clarity. From my modest room next to the laundry, I could hear the hum of the machines mixing with the birdsong. I dressed carefully, choosing an ivory-tailored suit I reserved for special occasions. Today would undoubtedly be an occasion none of us would ever forget. During breakfast, the dynamic had subtly changed. My family watched me with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. The mockery had ceased, replaced by uncomfortable silence and furtive glances. My revelation the night before had shaken the foundations of the family hierarchy, but they still didn't know the whole truth. My mother was the first to try and approach. "Claire, dear, we didn't know your business was doing so well," she said with a tense smile. "You should have told us." "I tried, Mom." For years, my voice was calm, without a trace of bitterness. Every time I mentioned a new client or an important project, you changed the subject to talk about Jessica's achievements. My sister had the decency to blush. "Well, the important thing is that now we know," my father intervened, adopting a conciliatory tone he had never used with me before. "We're proud of you, of course." Rob, however, maintained his skepticism. $3 million in annual revenue. "That's impressive, if it's true," he commented, emphasizing the last part. "Although revenue isn't the same as profit, of course." "My profit margin last year was 28%, I replied coolly. "After taxes." His expression transformed into a mixture of surprise and something that looked almost like respect. At 10 o'clock, Michael approached our table. "Miss Claire, everything is ready for the meeting you requested." My family looked at me strangely. "I organized a small presentation about the hotel's history," I explained, standing up. "I thought it would interest you, considering how important it was to grandfather." We headed to the main conference room, an elegant space with large windows offering panoramic ocean views. Inside, to my family's surprise, was not just the hotel's management team, but also an older, distinguished-looking man I recognized immediately, Mr. Matthews, my grandfather's lawyer. "What does this mean, Claire?" my father asked, suddenly alarmed. "Please, take your seats," I indicated, pointing to the front row of chairs. Once everyone was seated, I positioned myself in front of them. My heart was pounding, but my voice remained steady. "Thank you all for coming. As you know, this hotel was the crown jewel of Grandfather Arthur's businesses. He built it from scratch, converting a small inn into one of the most prestigious establishments on the coast." I activated the projector, showing old photographs of the hotel in its early days. My family watched with a mixture of nostalgia and confusion. "What you may not know," I continued, "is what really happened to the hotel after his death." My mother tensed visibly. "Grandfather sold the hotel before he died. We never knew to whom." "That's not entirely accurate," Mr. Matthews intervened, standing beside me. "Mr. Arthur didn't sell the hotel. He transferred it to a trust." "A trust," my father repeated, frowning. "Why weren't we informed?" "Because it wasn't relevant to you," Mr. Matthews replied with professional coldness. "The trust had a single beneficiary." All eyes turned to me. I could see the pieces fitting together in their minds. "It can't be," Jessica whispered. I nodded slowly. "Grandfather left me the hotel. I've been the owner for 6 months." The silence that followed was absolute, as if the air itself had stopped moving. The expressions ranged from disbelief to indignation, passing through the deepest shock. Rob was the first to recover his voice. "This is absurd. Why would he leave you, precisely you, his most valuable possession?" "That's an excellent question," I replied, looking directly at my parents. "And I think Mom might have some idea." My mother paled instantly. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I found your letters, Mom. The ones you wrote to Grandfather, trying to convince him that I didn't deserve his attention or his inheritance." Several gasps were heard in the room. My mother seemed to shrink in her chair. "I also found something else," I continued, signaling Michael, who delivered a folder to each family member. "The documents confirming that Dad and Rob tried to manipulate Grandfather into selling them the hotel at a reduced price shortly before his death." My father opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were copies of emails, fraudulent purchase proposals, and false appraisals that underestimated the hotel's value. This is taken out of context," he stammered. "No, it's not," Mr. Matthews intervened. "Mr. Arthur showed me these documents. That's when he decided to modify his will and leave the hotel in trust to Claire, the only person he truly trusted to preserve his legacy." Rob stood up abruptly, his face red with anger. "This is a conspiracy. You must have manipulated the old man or the lawyer. You don't have what it takes to run a business like this." "The results suggest otherwise," I replied calmly. "In the 6 months since I took control, the hotel's revenue has increased by 18%, customer satisfaction has improved, and we've been nominated for 2 Hospitality Excellence Awards." Michael and the management team nodded in confirmation, their faces showing pride and respect. My mother seemed genuinely bewildered. If you're the owner, why did you accept staying in that horrible room? Why did you allow us to treat you like that? It was the question I had been waiting for. Because I needed to understand, I replied, feeling emotion finally break my voice. I needed to comprehend if you really saw me as worthless, or if there was some deeper reason for your contempt. The tears threatened to flow, but I held them back. And what I discovered was even more painful than I imagined. It's not that you believed I had no value. It's that you feared what would happen if others saw my value, especially grandfather. My mother lowered her gaze, unable to meet mine. The letters show it clearly, Mom. You couldn't stand that grandfather loved me. You couldn't accept that he saw something special in me. Why? What did I ever do to deserve that? The silence that followed was broken by a muffled sob. It was my mother, who seemed to have collapsed under the weight of decades of secrets. You were just like him, she finally murmured. You had the same look, the same way of seeing the world. When you were little, he used to say you were his living image, that you had his entrepreneurial spirit. She paused, breathing shakily. And I was always a disappointment to him. I was never smart enough, ambitious enough. When you appeared, with your creativity and determination, I saw how his eyes lit up when talking to you in a way they never did with me. The revelation fell like a bomb in the room. Decades of resentment, of maternal jealousy, of a competition I never knew we were in. So you decided to make sure I never shone, I concluded, feeling a mixture of understanding and pain. You convinced the whole family that I was less, that my dreams weren't worth it. My mother didn't deny it. She couldn't. And you? I addressed my father. You saw a business opportunity. If I stayed marginalized from the family, I wouldn't be a threat to your plans with the hotel. My father seemed to have aged 10 years in the last few minutes. Jessica, meanwhile, remained silent, apparently processing everything she had just discovered about our family dynamics. It was then that I made the most important decision of all. Despite everything, I said finally, breaking the dense silence, I'm still part of this family. My words seemed to float in the air, unexpected and disconcerting. We're not here for a settling of accounts, I continued. I could have humiliated you from the beginning, expelled you from the hotel, or treated you as you treated me. But that would only perpetuate the cycle of resentment that has poisoned this family for too long. My mother looked at me with red-rimmed eyes, a mixture of shame and amazement on her face. When grandfather left me this hotel, I didn't completely understand why. Now I know it wasn't just about the business. It was about giving us a chance to heal. I walked to the large window, contemplating the sea that stretched before us, the same sea my grandfather contemplated every morning. Grandfather left something else in the trust, I announced, turning to them. A letter that was to be delivered to the family 6 months after I took possession of the hotel. That is today. Mr. Matthews nodded and took an envelope from his briefcase. He handed it to me solemnly. This was Mr. Arthur's last wish, beyond the legal aspects, he explained. He specifically requested that it be read in the presence of the entire family. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the envelope. I extracted the pages written in my grandfather's unmistakable handwriting and began reading aloud. My dear family. If you are hearing these words, it means Claire has assumed her role as owner of the Seabrook Grand. And the time has come for you to know my true reasons. This hotel represents my legacy. But a legacy is not just walls and business, it is the values we transmit to the generations that follow us. For years, I watched sadly as our family fragmented. I saw the contempt for Claire, the person who, ironically, most resembles me in spirit and vision. Eleanor, my dear daughter, you always tried to prove your worth to me by competing with your own daughter. It was never necessary. I loved you for who you were, not for who you believed you should be to impress me. Rob and Jessica, you built your lives on appearances and superficial ambitions. True success is not measured in properties or status, but in the integrity with which we live. I left the hotel to Claire not only because I trust her ability to manage it, but because I trust her heart to heal our family's wounds. My last wish is that you use this revelation as an opportunity to reflect, to acknowledge past mistakes, and to build a future where mutual respect replaces contempt, where family love is stronger than individual ambitions. The hotel now legally belongs to Claire, but spiritually, it belongs to all of you, if you are willing to build a new family dynamic based on respect and acceptance. With eternal love. Arthur. When I finished reading, several people in the room, including the hotel staff, had tears in their eyes. The silence that followed was charged with emotion, with realization, with truths denied for too long. My mother was the first to speak. All this time, she murmured. All this time, competing with my own daughter, trying to prove something to a father who already loved me. She stood slowly and, to my surprise, approached me. With a voice broken by emotion, she said, "Claire, I don't know if you can ever forgive me. I was a terrible mother, blinded by my own insecurities." I saw in her eyes something I had never seen before, genuine recognition, vulnerability, and the beginning of deep regret. My father, meanwhile, seemed devastated. "Your grandfather was right," he admitted, almost to himself. "I built my whole life trying to impress others, forgetting what really matters." Jessica remained seated, silent, with an indescribable expression. Finally, she stood and walked to me. "I never understood why grandfather preferred you," she said slowly. "Now I see. While I sought his approval, you sought his wisdom. While I wanted his money, you wanted his legacy." There was no hostility in her voice, just a sad acceptance. Rob, however, didn't seem moved. He stood abruptly, his face red with indignation. "And I suppose now we should all feel guilty. We should congratulate you for inheriting an empire you didn't build." He looked at Jessica, expecting her support, but she remained by my side. "Rob," I said calmly. "The hotel is legally mine. That won't change. But what we do from here, as a family, depends on all of us." Mr. Matthews cleared his throat discreetly. "Actually, there is an additional clause that we haven't discussed." We all turned to him, surprised. Mr. Arthur established that at Claire's discretion, and solely at her discretion, she could assign minority stakes in the hotel to other family members, provided they demonstrated a commitment to the values he championed. The revelation fell like a second bomb. My family now looked at me with a mixture of hope and fear. "I'm not seeking servility in exchange for shares," I clarified. What grandfather wanted was genuine reconciliation, not one motivated by economic interest. "What do you propose, then?" my father asked, with a tone suggesting he was really willing to listen. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the opportunity to transform pain into something constructive. "I propose that we acknowledge the truth. We are a dysfunctional family that has caused real harm to its members. We can't erase the past, but we can decide what our future will be." I paused, looking each of them in the eyes. "The hotel will continue under my direction, but I am willing to create a family council where everyone has a voice. Not for operational decisions, but to ensure grandfather's legacy endures in philanthropic works, in community outreach, in the values he defended." "And the shares?" Rob asked, still skeptical. "They will be earned over time," I replied firmly. "Not with flattery, but with actions that demonstrate you have truly understood grandfather's message." My mother approached and, with some hesitation, took my hands in hers. "I don't deserve a second chance," she said, tears running down her cheeks. "But if you're willing to give me one, I promise I'll do everything possible to be the mother I should have been from the beginning." I felt my own tears surfacing. Years of longing for the maternal love I never received manifested in that moment of shared vulnerability. "That's all I ever wanted, Mom," I replied softly. My father joined us, followed by Jessica. Rob remained distant, observing the scene with a mixture of confusion and resentment. "I need time to process all this," he said finally, heading for the door. "Take all the time you need," I replied. "The door will be open when you're ready." After Rob left, the atmosphere in the room changed. It was as if an invisible weight had been lifted, allowing us to breathe freely for the first time in decades. The hotel staff, who had witnessed the entire scene, seemed deeply moved. Michael discreetly began indicating that they should leave us alone. When it was just us and Mr. Matthews, Jessica spoke. "What do we do now? How do we begin to repair so much damage?" "With honesty," I replied. "Grandfather used to say that family wounds only heal when they're exposed to the air. We've kept this resentment in the darkness for too long." My father nodded slowly. "You have his wisdom, Claire. You always have. Mr. Matthews stood, collecting his briefcase. My work here is finished. Mr. Arthur would be proud of how you've handled this, Claire. As he headed for the door, he added, by the way, there's an additional box of your grandfather's personal documents in my office. He mentioned you would find special interest in his diaries from the years he built the hotel. After Mr. Matthews left, my family and I remained in the room, enveloped in a silence that, for the first time, wasn't uncomfortable, but contemplative. I never asked you about your business, my mother said suddenly. 3 million in revenue, 30 employees. You must be very good at what you do. I smiled slightly. I am. And I'd love to show you my work someday. I'd like that, she replied with a sincerity I had never heard in her voice. Jessica, always practical, intervened. So, what happens with the rest of the family weekend? Do we continue with the planned activities? I reflected for a moment. I think so. But with some changes. To start, I'm going to move to the suite that corresponds to me as the owner. And what do we do about Rob? My father asked. We'll give him space, I replied. Some people need more time than others to accept the truth. That night, as the staff transferred my belongings to the hotel's main suite, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Victory, yes, but not the petty victory of revenge. It was the deeper victory of having broken a toxic cycle. From my suite's terrace, I contemplated the same sea my grandfather loved. The salty wind caressed my face, bringing with it the aroma of new possibilities. You were right, grandfather, I murmured to the wind. True power isn't in humiliating those who hurt us, but in giving them the opportunity to change. At that moment, I remembered something my grandfather used to say. A hotel is like a family, Claire. Each room is different. Each guest brings their own story. The secret is making everyone feel valued, not despite their differences, but because of them. For the first time in my life, I felt our family had the opportunity to become the kind of place my grandfather envisioned, a place where each person could find their space without losing the sense of belonging to the whole. The road would be long and probably difficult. Some wounds would take years to heal completely, if they ever did. But we had taken the first step, perhaps the most important one. We had looked truth in the eye and decided not to look away. Epilogue. 1 year has passed since that revealing family reunion. The Seabrook Grand thrives under my direction, with changes grandfather Arthur would have approved of, a scholarship program for young people from the local community, rooms adapted for people with disabilities, and a firm commitment to sustainability. My relationship with my family has evolved in ways I never imagined possible. My mother and I have a weekly lunch where we are slowly rebuilding our relationship. She no longer seeks to compete with me but to truly know me. Sometimes, when we talk about design or business, I see a glimmer of true maternal pride in her eyes. Jessica was the biggest surprise. After reflecting on her life and values, she decided to return to school to study social work. I want to build something meaningful on my own merits, she told me. Her transformation has been profound and genuine. My father found an unexpected purpose in the hotel's community program, where he now coordinates activities for young entrepreneurs. He says that teaching them what he learned, including his mistakes, gives him a sense of purpose that money and status never provided. Rob took 6 months to speak to me again. When he finally did, it was to ask for a job opportunity, not a free steak. He now runs the hotel's expansion department, where his ambition, properly channeled, is proving valuable. Room 108, the room they housed me in that first day, has been transformed into a small museum that tells the story of the hotel and its founder. At the end of the tour, visitors find grandfather's letter framed as a reminder that family businesses are, above all, about values and legacy. Every day, when I walk through the corridors of this hotel, which is both my inheritance and my responsibility, I feel grandfather's presence guiding me. I didn't choose to reveal my secret out of revenge, but for the possibility of healing it offered. And although the path hasn't been easy, the family we are building now is stronger and more authentic than the one we pretended to be. As the sign at the hotel entrance says, we don't build walls, but bridges. We don't offer rooms, but homes. That is the true secret of the Seabrook Grand and the most valuable legacy my grandfather left me. There are stories that aren't just stories, they are mirrors of life. If this one moved you, help us continue telling others that also deserve to be heard. Become a member. Join us. Thank you very much, and have an excellent day.